actually find it's fairly easy for us to turn it on when we get to a show, mainly because we just haven't seen each other in a long time, and it's like, hey, what's going on? Let's have some beers, and like, woohoo, party. And then at the end of it, it takes, like we were talking about, how hard we all slept that first night after the last tour ended.
Yeah, I don't want to sound like grumpy old men, but you get older, it's physically harder to go on tour than when you're 20 years old.
I don't think I'm sounding grumpy. I'm just old.
You guys aren't like hanging out all the time when it's...
Actually, we do hang out quite a bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you do see each other. You just don't...
Oh, you mean at home, like us at home? We all live in different places.
Okay. Is anyone left in Kansas City at this point?
I live in a town called Prairie Village, which is just like a suburb right outside the city. Matt and Ryan live in Lawrence, Kansas, which is where University of Kansas is, and it's about 45 minutes outside of Kansas City. James is in Buffalo, New York, and Rob lives in Worcester, Massachusetts. So we're kind of all over.
So there's three of you within driving proximity of one another. What's kept you in and around Kansas City?
I have 2 kids, and that's where all my family lives. Okay. If my family wasn't there, I don't know if I'd still be there. I love Kansas City. It's very nice people there. But I mean, when you have kids, it's got free babysitters, when you got family close by, and my family wants to see my kids, and so that's cool.
At what point into the career did everyone just sort of start dispersing into the wind?
The beginning? I mean, Matt moved into Boston really early.
I mean, we've known each other for a really long time, even before we were in bands together. But yeah, once we started touring as much as we did in like the late 90s, early 2000s, I was like, I'm not going to pay for an apartment in Kansas City if my girlfriend lives in Boston. I'm just going to...
It doesn't matter where you lived. I mean, we were like 1 year we were on tour, I want to say almost 10 months out of the year when we were really touring. That's
275 days out of the year. Like, it's crazy.
At that point, it doesn't really matter where you live, right?
So a girl brought you out to Boston.
The girl.
Do you have that thing where, you're sort of touring around and checking out cities and sort of, fantasizing the possibility?
Oh, totally. And still, like, I mean, New Orleans is one of my favorite cities. I don't know that I want to live there, but I go there at least once a year. Do all sorts of things.
We're very lucky because we get to travel. We get to, it's always like, well, I'll be in New York next year. Or Seattle's for me, like Seattle, Vancouver. Yeah. Unfortunately, those are like some of the most expensive places in America. Cause for what we do for a living, we make the same no matter where we live. It's not like, I lived in San Francisco. I'll make so much more money though. Yeah. It's like, no, we make the same.
Coming up through the ranks in San Francisco is different than coming up in a place like Kansas City. I mean, the competition.
There aren't really ranks in Kansas.
That's the thing. There's no
or the rank.
Like there's no rank in the music industry. It's like there are those who get successful because they work hard, and there's those who get successful because they're lucky. I think we've been a little bit of both. But like one of the great things about living in the Midwest is that it's cheap and you're centrally located, and in our job, we get to travel a lot. So being able to just go home and not pay that San Francisco or apparently Jersey City rent money.
I don't know how. You just got to be young and have like 7 roommates, because I don't know. It's like, it's so hard. I guess the reward's great if you're like a band in New York, because all the media's here, you have those, but it seems like nowadays it doesn't matter. Like,
I think the primary difference, and this is something I talk to people in San Francisco and New York about all the time, is there's no safety net, right? I mean, you can't like take like 3 or 6 months to go explore your dream. If you're lucky, you can do a day job and then come home and then work on.
A lot of Trustafarians, land of Trustafarians. What do they do?
Boulder.
Oh, it's just like, what do they do? Like, how are they like doing all this? Their parents are rich. Okay.
I get the idea, and correct me if I'm wrong though, that like in a place like Kansas City or Minneapolis, that it might be a bit more of sort of maybe a tight knit scene, or at least like people are potentially more supportive of one another.
I think that's anywhere maybe.
Yeah.
But it seems like
New York just seems so cutthroat.
Kansas City and like Lawrence they're very similar, same kind of scene, where there's just only so many people, where I think in New York you have little pockets of scenes, right?
I just feel like somebody would like stab you in the back here in order to get your...
Yeah, that's not...
I mean, that does happen. I mean, it's competitive, and then you get this kind of like...
There's jealousy,
you know what tall poppy syndrome is? When like you think that you've grown higher than the rest of the poppies in the field.
Big fish and...
Yeah, and like you get kind of... Like we got that a little bit in Lawrence when we first started doing well, and And then we were just like, we'll buy the round. And they're like, you guys are all right. Like.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I feel like in New York City, especially, there's like a little Kansas City where all the people are too good. We got too big for Kansas City. I'm too cool for Lawrence. I got to move to New York.
Chicago's a lot like that.
Chicago, yeah. Like, I feel like that's a lot of city. Like, you get that pocket, but we stuck it out. We stayed true to our roots.
Because we left all the time.
Because we all moved to different cities.
No, we just toured all the time, so it's just easier to be there.
I think a lot of people were maybe, like, as we got successful, there was definitely some jealousy in the scene back home, which is kind of lame, but I think that's like any scene.
How does it manifest itself?
People talking shit on you. I mean, it's pretty that simple, and, a lot of people, it's like attitude, like, it should have been my band, or you guys, it's like, we worked really hard. I'm not saying we're the best band ever, but
we were lucky too.
We were lucky. It was timing, but we toured all the time. We didn't just stay at a local bar and play night after night. We got out there and we took risks, which is ultimately what you got to do. But it's a lot easier when you're 20 years old, don't have kids, and you can go lose a bunch of money on the road.
It's hard not to be jealous in a sense to, sort of like see people succeeding that maybe you feel like perhaps aren't as good of a band as you are.
I remember there was a time when I had to have like an honest conversation with myself when we put out On a Wire and it wasn't getting very well received, but then at the same time, like Saves the Day and Dashboard were like blowing up, and I would see them on TV, and part of me, my initial feeling was to feel like really jealous about it, and then I was just like, had to kind of like have this kind of come to Jesus moment of just like, those are my friends and I'm happy for them. It's not like there's only so many people that like music and they're taking them away from my band. You know what I mean? But you have that feeling initially, like you get very, why do they get to be on Conan?
I think music is always, there's always a competitiveness among bands, even if it's said or unsaid.
Especially because it's such a subjective thing.
I try hard not to do that, but you're right. It is there. I just don't like that about myself when I start to feel that way, and so I try not to do it.
I don't think we feel that way anymore. I'm so blessed that we get to do this,
when Jawbreaker got back together for Riot Fest and all these like old punk rockers were like talking shit. I
don't get that at all.
And I was just like, man, fuck that, get paid. Those guys
absolutely blew my mind that anyone would be upset that Jawbreaker went and got paid. It's like, are you 14 years old?
Not only did they went and got paid, but that you could go see them play music again, that they're in the world playing music.
Honest to God, I thought that is the most just petty bullshit I've ever heard in my life.
Someone licensed a song to a commercial. It's like, who's sell out? And like, yeah, they fucking paid their rent that much, like.
Everybody has a certain regret that they didn't do something at some point in their career because it just like seemed like selling out, or it seemed like it wasn't true to what the band was.
I feel like those things come up more now.
More now for you guys specifically?
I want to make sure I word this delicately, but I feel like things come up, whether it's show opportunities or bands to tour with, that isn't a great fit, because we seem to like, in different parts of the world, we seem to be associated with different genres. Like, we're called a pop punk band in England, and I don't get that at all.
First we get, like, why are we playing this show?
Yeah.
Like, how do we fit into this world?
It's kind of awesome, though, right? To, like, just sort of go into...
And that's the thing, I don't want to sound like I'm trying to be, like, a snob about it. Like, it's very complimentary that, like, a successful band would want us to, you know what I mean? But it's also, like, sometimes it's just... we don't feel it's a good fit for all the mistakes that we've made.
We'll get into those later.
The one thing that we have is our integrity. We've owned it when we fell on our face. So.
I think we just did another podcast today, and we kind of sort of asked a similar question, and about like, it's like our band's like trajectory, and if we should have been more calculating. Yeah. And we weren't. We were not calculated at all of our decisions. We just kind of did what we thought was wanted to do.
About it, it was all on emotion. I mean, that's like, it's just all like,
Matt said it, not Jim.
So you might say it was
the most emo decision you could possibly make. But just because you didn't know it, like, it's just like, you go like, no, I like this, so therefore, by the transitive property, everyone else will like this too, because you like what I like, so, and then sometimes that's just not the case. And so then you have those things like regrets. I think is a strong word, because like, I think that all of those experiences ultimately get you to this point, and I really like this point that we're at. So I don't really think of them, I try anyway. When I go to my dark places, I think of them as regrets, but I try not to. But, we certainly could have done things differently and maybe not had such extreme reactions.
I didn't want it to sound like a leading question either. It's just, I like interviewing people who have been doing this for a while, because they've got a lot of perspective.
Well, listen, when I was 23, I wasn't going, I wonder when I'm 40, what will the legacy of our band be? And Like that wasn't on my.
Did you
People
and your
ask that shit though?
That was not. That
no,
was,
but in your wildest dreams at 23, did you think that you would be doing this in your 40s?
No, I didn't think past 25 when I was 20.
Honest to God, we looked at bands, like the biggest you could get was like, say like Superchunk or something, or like Sunday to Real Estate. They tell it the Bottleneck, this club in Lawrence was like, I don't know, 450 people. I was like, oh, we can do that. Like that's like a goal. No, like the idea of even really making a big living out of doing this was not a thing. We literally signed a record deal because we knew we were going to get to go to Europe, and we dropped out of college because like, well, we'll go to Europe, we'll tour for a year, and then I'll go. Because I was in art school, I was like, I can keep my scholarship, I can take a year off, and that was going to be it. And then
I guess it's calculated in that sense. This seems to be working.
Calculated in the sense that I'm going to go back to school. But then we started I remember the first tour, we actually came home with money, a few $100 a piece, but I was like 19, I'm like, fuck yeah.
You get to a certain point and time becomes a little bit more precious, right? I mean, obviously you're a bit older and you can't tour as much as you were before, but you've got these exterior obligations in life. You have to be smart now about what you're choosing to do.
Yeah, the idea is to work smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, you also don't want to get into that situation where you're only doing the club for the money, even if it's like Guy Fieri's Cheese Dick Saloon. Like, you know what I mean? Like, because we get
sometimes you got to go for the money, but usually it turns out to be not as cool of a show.
I mean, I think Guy Fieri's Cheese Dick Saloon would actually be a pretty fun bash.
If it were like in the middle of like if it were in like Marfa, Texas or something like that, it would be
just like the Prada store and then a Guy Fieri restaurant. At the end of every tour or every record, I mean, is there a sense that that this is going to keep going?
I think at the end of the last record, we thought we were going to do kind of like, because Jim was going to go back to school and Rob was doing Spoon and James was doing Reggie, and it was like, well, maybe this is going to be more of like a Weekend Warrior kind of thing, like if we ever got a festival, which was for a little bit. Now it's kind of like we do think about that kind of stuff of like, well, how much longer can we actually do this, and who knows, like, so let's make the most of the time that we have.
Going back to school seems to be a constant.
I did go back to school. I went back, I got a degree in geology, and I was in school for 3 years and worked for USGS doing water science stuff, and quit to go on tour, and then decided I loved studying geology, but I like playing music more.
I think you wanted to be your own boss.
That's ultimately, and I almost did it to like, in a weird sense, like to prove to myself that I'm smart. I don't know. I mean, I don't know like a nicer way to say that, but almost like I needed something else. But now I kind of wish I would have just gone back to art school.
Lord over the rest of the band that he's the only one with a degree.
I really enjoyed going back to school. It was strange being like in my 30s, and there were like some fans of my band I was going to school with, so that was kind of funny. But yeah, it was a cool experience. It was awesome.
Does being in a band, does being on tour ever sort of feel like that? Like being the guy who's back in school in his 30s?
Sometimes you run into people that you've known for a long time and they're like, you guys are still doing it, huh? I like to think of it as that we still get to do it.
I will say, like, before, like, Friends, it was almost like magical. Like, we are backstage. we're going to these shows. Yeah. And now it's like, yeah, maybe I can make it to the show. I got a baby, we got kids, and it goes along with that. Oh, you still play music.
But I actually kind of like, it's fun to see everybody, and it's less Mom's Gone Wild than it used to be.
We are an excuse for people to go crazy. Our crowd, I swear to God, it's like everyone's got the babysitter and like,
we got a sitter rock. We got a sitter.
A lot of bands, especially indie rock bands, tell me that, especially ones who've been doing this for a while, that, for them, fewer and fewer people are coming out to the shows, and they can't really figure out how much of it is just people maybe coming out to music less because, there obviously has been a paradigm shift. How much of it
weekends. We are turning into a weekend band. We definitely notice how many more people come out to our shows on a Thursday through Sunday as opposed to like a Tuesday night. It's a lot harder when your fans are in their 30s and 40s.
But I assume that, because you made so much of your music at a very young age, that it is something that does connect with a younger audience. I mean, are you finding that kids are continuing to discover it?
My daughter's friends and like their friends of friends, the ones who like get into like new music and then do that like back search of like, oh, like I love modern baseball. What bands do they like? And they come to our band and then just like, oh, okay, and then they rediscover that, and then which is what I did when I was their age.
It's crazy though. It's all like algorithms now, right? I mean, it's not so much sort of like going and hunting.
Like, are you saying it's a bad thing? No, I'll tell you, like Spotify
Yeah.
I have found more bands, and I feel like I'm pretty well versed in music, but like a band I like, and I'll always go to bands that are related to them and I've totally found new bands. I've found new bands and gone and seen them in concert because of things like on Spotify. So that for 40-year-old me to do that, then it's like, that's awesome. Hopefully kids are doing the same thing, you know?
I guess it sounds pessimistic the way I was framing it, and I do think it's a bit of a double-edged sword in that it loses context to some degree, obviously, like if you're finding it on Spotify, but at the same time...
I don't know that when you're 15 that you can understand that it would have a different context. Like, to them, it's just as important as it was to us when we were 15 before we had the internet. That's just the reality that they live in. They don't really know any different. It's not until we
had mixtapes and you go, Jim, check out these bands. Oh, cool.
So like, we can analyze it and be like, well, are you not getting as much of a connection as maybe our generation did? But they don't know that. So for them, they're getting just as much of a connection out of it as anybody else.
If it's leading them to like go see that band and to, follow that band, then I guess it doesn't really matter, does it?
I was getting to a positive point, which is that there's no barriers for younger listeners. I mean, they're not
true.
They're not devoted to one genre or, one style of music in the way that music fans were earlier. It can go from Get Up Kids to Kendrick Lamar without really sort of skipping a beat when you're listening to it that way.
I think that sort of tribalism ends up being less so in the age of the internet because you can always it's easier to find your tribe, and it's easier to, therefore you're not necessarily as close knit, and so you don't have to put. Also, I think that like music used to especially punk rock, had so many goddamn rules, and it was like, and I think in a post Green Day, a post Blink-182 world, like, it's just kind of like, no one cares about major labels anymore. No one cares about scene, like, you know what I mean? Like, it just seems like it's all just sort of like, it's much more open and you can do whatever you want. No one's mad that you charge $7 instead of $5 for your ticket.
I look at kids who grew up with the internet and, are on Facebook, on Twitter, and are sort of posting these like regrettable things. And I'm always really glad that I didn't sort of grow up with social media.
I say that all the time. I think about, I have 2 young daughters, and it's just like, it's scary. But
I think that's our job as parents, to make sure that they understand that. The people who are doing that now are now the ones who are realizing like, oh, the people who the job you're interviewing for are going to see your drunk Cancun pictures. And I don't think the next generation is going to be as
uptight about that, because it's in a way.
Either they're not going to be as uptight.
They're going to be more savvy about.
I think they're going to be more savvy about like what they post, and they're going to understand that everyone sees it.
What's funny is like when the Get Up Kids broke up in like 2005-ish, that's right when social media really started. We didn't have a MySpace page. We didn't have any of that. So we sort of had to relearn.
Got a MySpace page.
Yeah, we just did.
Hey, congratulations.
Yeah. We're on Friendster. You'll love it. Yeah. We had to sort of relearn the whole,
we're just on LinkedIn.
We're on LinkedIn. That's a whole new world for us.
That said, you guys were what, like 19 or something when you started putting music out in the world?
I was 18.
18.
I was a senior in high school.
You didn't.
That's
senior in high school. I remember bringing the 7-inch to school because Nathan was a freshman at KCAI. You were freshman. Rob and I were seniors, and then Ryan was a senior when he joined the band.
You don't have these like regrettable Facebook posts, but you do have this stuff that you were working on and putting out into the world when you were 19.
No, but I've got some really mean record reviews that I wrote for Second Nature Records that I'm sure somebody could dig up.
Now, don't you feel bad about that kind of?
I do. Like, it's a very 17-year-old, drawing a line in the sand about, like, and I see that.
It's that sort of punk rock thing again.
Yeah, and I see that but I don't even think it's just a punk rock thing. I think punk rock exacerbates it, but I think it's very much like a teenage thing of being like, life is black and white. This person's wrong. This person's right.
Dude, those are, life is black and white. She is wrong and I am right.
It's like face-to-face lyric.
But you do have this sort of like definitive portrait of where you guys were at that time in your life.
Oh, fucking tell me about it. We had this the other night because we have this song called A Newfound Interest in Massachusetts that we played it the other night in Boston for the first time in 15, 16 years. And I really like the song a lot, but the lyrics are so I'm 17 and I'm got my black pen and I write on my black paper under the full moon, and
that's some deep shit.
Yeah.
It's interesting though to sort of be able to really juxtapose that. Again, you have this definitive portrait. You guys are continuing, you put out an EP not too long ago. What are sort of the most obvious differences between songwriting then and now?
I understand what a metaphor is.
Yeah, I don't know. We're trying to get back to where our headspace where you didn't think about it too much.
Well, I think it's actually come full circle in that if we don't think about it too much, then it just kind of becomes second nature, and it's like riding a bike. And so because we've done it so much and we've all gotten so good at our own particular skills, all we have to do is just not get in our own way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And if we just do what comes naturally and do the things that we know that we do well, I mean, that's what we did on the EP, and people seem to like it more than anything we've done in a while. So, I don't know. But I do think it's something that comes from experience. It's not really like a contrived thing of like, oh, we need to go back to this old sound. We need to try and like redo it. It's just more like, well, this is what we do. Let's stop fighting it.
Does having those, those like longer breaks between playing together, between recording music, does that get you out of your own way?
Part of the reason that we're able to have been a band as long as we have is because we're able to take breaks from each other. I mean, I think that that's the key to the longevity. I mean, like, I think when the band broke up in 2004, 5.
We quit in 4, but we kept going through it because contractually obligated. You know what? We should have done.
We should have taken a year off.
We should have just gotten away. I think about that a lot, and I think ultimately I probably still would have quit. Like, even at the time in my headspace, I even say like I wish we would have just taken like a couple years off, but.
I mean, you did.
Well, but I mean, but not even announced.
I don't think we were mature enough at that time to understand that that's what we needed. And like, hindsight's 20/20. But like now, it's like we have conversations about like, I don't want to be gone for more than 2 weeks at a time unless it's like such a good opportunity that we can't miss it. It's a very easy job under weird conditions, like you don't sleep much, you eat like shit, you probably drink too much, and it's hard on you, like physically and emotionally, because you're away from your family.
When you're younger, it feels like everything is just like the end of the world, or everything is very sort of like definite. When you did break up, when you did officially disband, did it feel like that was kind of it forever?
Yes, that was my intention. Is that we weren't going to do it ever again.
You guys were just sick of each other at that point?
Yeah, I like I was saying, at the time I was so done. I mean, I don't know if I thought, I probably thought, oh, we'll go 20 years from now play a show.
Yeah.
But I didn't really think we were going to get back and make music or anything. And even when we got back together initially, we thought we got a bunch of festival offers, like, well, shit, why not? Our intention was not to make music. It was just, we were going to do it. Like, even for me, I was like, well, I'll do these shows, make some money, and go back to school. Once again, bringing up to school. That was my attitude. And then we're like, oh, we're having fun. Just kept on going.
The joy went out of it.
Oh, completely? When we first initially broke up?
Yeah.
Yes, for me. Oh yeah. I was over it. I was in a weird spot. But
I have this song that ended up being a New Amsterdam song called Drinkin' in the Afternoon that I wrote on the tour that I quit the band. I was sitting in my hotel room in Japan at like 2 p.m. wearing nothing but my underwear and drinking beer and writing this really sad song.
You get a couple of festival offers. It seems like it's just going to be a 1 or 2 or 3 off thing. At what point is it clear that it's time to really start, going full bore into this again?
I think we had to make that decision. I don't know that there was any like sign.
I think it was a slow thing. Like, well, let's do a tour and see how that goes. Okay, let's do,
How much of it was like breaking up with someone and then like slowly getting back together?
Well, I don't think we were ever not friends.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't like, I hate your guts, I don't ever want to see you again. It was just like, I just don't want to be on tour with you anymore.
I've had breakups where I'm like, I'm definitely going to be friends with this person, but like, we're not going to talk for a little while.
I think that's more what the Get Up Kids were. It was at no point did I hate anybody. We were just done.
When does the songwriting start again?
We got back together in 2009 and did this tour that was like the 10-year anniversary of Something to Write Home About, and then...
Which is now the 20th next year.
Yeah. It's funny to me, in interviews now, we keep talking about this like 3-year hiatus that the band broke up, because we've now been back together as long as we were before the band broke up in the first place. We've been a band for 23 years.
We were broken up for about 5 years, even though we mentally weren't a band, but we came back and did that tour in 2005, but we definitely weren't really a band.
But if you think about it, if we were a band from 95 to 2005, took 3 years off, and then have been a band since 2008 to 2018.
Yeah, another 10.
So it's 23, like we've been a band just as long at this point.
And people still go, Get Up Kids reunion. It's like, it's not a reunion at this point.
Like 3 or 5 years or however long that is, that's like normal space between albums for bands at that point. Like, that's not like we were like broken up.
If we had been mature enough to be like, I need to take a break, and we need to take a year off, then it would have just been a year. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Realistically, we should have taken time off between On a Wire and Guilt Show, and then we could have come back with Guilt Show, which I think is a really strong record that I think people would have really liked, but we didn't give it a chance because we were so burnt out.
Is there a sense that you have to kind of reset the button when you've made everything that official versus just, getting back together and recording another album without an official breakup?
I kind of feel now, having gone through the whole breakup, makeup thing, that I don't think bands really ever actually break unless somebody dies.
I think that's true. Yeah,
I don't think bands ever actually it's always on the table. I mean, even the Smiths, it's on the table.
Nobody in this group seems as insufferable as Morrissey, though, at least from the outside. So you've got that going for you.
Well, you've only just met.
That's
Joe.
true.
But it seems to be that we get into this thing now of these sort of marketing things of people are asking me in interviews about oh, what are you going to do for the 20-year of Somewhere at Home About? And I'm like, I don't know that we're going to do anything. We have an album coming out next year. We're going to be focused on that. And to be honest, those sort of milestones are fairly arbitrary to me. It's just sort of yay, it's 20 years later. Woohoo. It's just sort of it's not like we're putting out B-sides or anything from that.
If we did anything, maybe we'll do a local show and play it or for fun or something. Invite friends. I don't think we're going to do a tour. That's right. We're looking at the future right now. We got a new record.
Well, that's the thing too, is then you get into this thing that we're now where it's just we want to celebrate the past and we play those songs now anyway, but we don't have to just only wallow in it. You know what I mean? We want to celebrate the past, but then keep moving forward.
It's hard not to be nostalgic about your early 20s.
Well, I think there's a difference between being nostalgic and then only living in that time period. I always use the Uncle Rico analogy from Napoleon Dynamite, where he's like, if the coach had only put me in that game.
That's regrets coming up again.
And I don't feel that way.
If only we would have written All the Small Things and not Blink-182. Sure. If only.
There's two prongs here, and there's two things you can fall into. There's sort of living in the past, and then there's just romanticizing things, right? I mean, there's forgetting all of the shitty parts, all of the sort of the bullshit, the reason why you broke up in the first place.
I always say you're always living in the good old days. Mm-hmm. Even when life's shitty, because you do forget. And then it's always we're in the good old days right now.
Celebrate the past, live in the present, think about the future. If the only thing you live in is the past, then it's not healthy.
People talk a lot about mindfulness these days. And when you do step out from it, when you do get a little bit of a break and are able to see what you were able to accomplish, sure, maybe you didn't go in exactly the directions that you wanted to, and perhaps other people are successful, but you have to be able to look at the career that you have and be pretty satisfied.
The way that manifests itself for us is in the way we write our set lists for shows like this. Come out with an oldie, set the tone, immediately go into a new song. And then we'll do songs from every single record. Well, we're not playing anything off of Rules, but every record that everybody's ever heard. And then even the EPs, and we'll do some deep cuts, and then we're in fucking Jersey, so we gotta do something for the hardcore kids. And then, we play the whole EP, which is granted is only 4 songs in the set, but then we'll come out and do the encore, and it's just 4 rippers off of Something to Write Home About, and everybody sings along and stage dives and whatever. But we went on this kind of journey of celebrating the whole catalog, including the new stuff. I think that's pretty representational of how I feel about the band and the legacy and the career of it.
I do want to hear that mindfulness story.
Oh, so I've been doing Headspace. We were going into the city today, and we had 20 minutes, and I was like, okay, I'm going to lay down in my bunk. I'm going to do Headspace for 10 minutes, and I'm on the bottom bunk. And so I got into it. I'm in a good guided meditation. It sounds so corny. Andy's speaking to me. That's the Headspace guy. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling chill. I'm getting ready to go into that New York City traffic. So this is a good space for me to get in. Yeah. And at the very end of it, James starts vacuuming the fucking bandwagon right by my head. And so it's just
You're not at that level.
I'm not full Buddhist yet, but it definitely helps.
Is it fun again right away when you guys got back together?
Yeah, but it's not. When we first get back together, it's not terribly professional because it's kind of like a college reunion. Because that's really our college years were spent in a van. When we're doing longer, actual tours, we have to kind of if you're gonna drink during the day, take a nap and drink lots of water. But no, it is fun.
At this point, what's the most fun part of the process?
For me, my favorite part of this job is when we're writing new stuff, a song that we've written gets stuck in my head, and then I know that there's a couple of the songs we've written for the new record that I get stuck in my head. Even sometimes they're just melodies, they're not even lyrics, and that makes me feel like I have this secret. You're going to like this when you hear it. Like, this is stuck in my head now.
It's almost painful withholding it for so long.
It's like keeping a secret. Or we've been talking about this one song that James wrote, this like really haunting piano ballad. We've just been calling the song The Bummer, but it's like really good. It's going to make you cry for sure.
Is there a sense that doing the best stuff that you've done?
I mean, I think that's subjective.
Subjectively from you.
I mean, I guess in theory, you get better as a songwriter the more you do it. You don't necessarily get worse at it. I think that we're in a good, how do they put it in comics? There's like the golden age and the silver age. Maybe we're in the silver age. Okay. There's like the second good wave of it, maybe. I do think that we're writing some really good stuff because we're not getting in our own way, you know? We're kind of our own worst enemies sometimes, and we're trying not to be now.
There you go. That was Matt and Jim of the Get Up Kids. Recorded that one before a show at the White Eagle Hall in Jersey City. Their latest EP, Kicker, is out now on polyvinyl. Thanks so much to them for taking the time. Really enjoy that conversation. Thanks to Chromatic for helping set up the interview. Thanks to you guys, as always, for listening to the program. If you like the show, there are so many ways to support us. You can rate and review us on iTunes or Google Podcasts. We're on Spotify now, wherever you happen to get your podcasts. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Tumblr. That's RYLcast.tumblr.com. That is the first and best place to get all of your RIYL related information. And I think that's about all we got for this week, so stick around because we are going to be back just about this time next week with another episode of RIYL.